Hey everybody, thank you for joining episode 33 of The Green Life. I'm really excited about today's episode as I have an amazing guest to talk about sprouting. I couldn't have no other person than Doug Evans to talk about the subject because he's kind of the father of sprouting. He knows everything else about sprouts, he knows everything about their benefits, he knows so much about raw food, vegan food. He's wonderful and he's really youthful and he has a beautiful energy. Now, before I introduce you more to Doug and before we go into the episode, I just want to shout out to Nama Well. The Nama juicers are official sponsors of The Green Life and they are amazing juicers that will revolutionize the way that you juice at home. The Nama juicers are cold pressed juicers which are very silent, very efficient. You can put all your ingredients in there, walk away, and when you're back, voila, your juice is ready to go. And you can actually do bulk juicing with the machine, especially the J2, which is wonderful. And on top of it, they are aesthetically very, very pleasing. To thank you for listening to the podcast, Namawell has shared a code that you can use when purchasing your J2. And remember, they come with about 15 years warranty, so they're really machines that are made to last. No other juicer has that. So the code is Chantal10 and we'll put the link in the show notes so that you can go to the website, check out everything they're about, and use the code when you're ready to buy one. Okay, so now let's go back to the episode, and I just am so excited about talking to Doug Evans. Doug is really a pioneer of the health food movement. That's really its title. After losing his mother to cancer and his father to heart disease and watching his brother suffer through diabetes and 3 strokes, he really invested in health. He co-founded the Organic Avenue store in New York City and also the first cold-pressed juice and raw food retailer in the US back in the early 2000s in New York. He is wonderful because he really went against the grain. Like, nobody knew about raw food, nobody really juiced at the time, and yet he was the person that started. He was also co-founder of Juicero, the first at-home cold-pressed juicer, and it's amazing because now that I'm in juicing, I really am passionate about this. In a 3-year period, Doug led the company from conception to production and sold 1 million Juicero Packs. That's huge, very, very good. And Doug has really had an amazing story. He started sprouting the way that he does now and that he talks about in his book, the Sprout book, when he was in the desert. So he lived in the desert, and not only was in an actual desert, he was also in a food desert. So he had to make do with whatever he had at home, and he realized that sprouts were the way. The most nutritious food on the planet, really easy to make at home, extremely affordable, and that's how he did it. And now he just spreads the love for sprouts, and I cannot wait to dive into this episode with him. So without further ado, let's start this wonderful journey into sprouting with Doug Evans. Hi Doug, thank you so much for joining The Green Life today. How are you?
I'm the best ever, Chantel. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I love your answers. First of all, congratulations on your little baby. How old is she now?
She's 10 weeks today. 10 weeks today.
Oh, she's so sweet. How's the sleeping going?
I mean, I sleep, I'm already living an entrepreneurial life. So I get up, I go to sleep. It's going fine. She's a good sleeper. She's a good eater. She's a good girl.
Oh, well, congratulations. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
On top of that, so thank you so much for making the time, because having a baby, I know, is not exactly like being just you and your wife. There's another person to cater for. So I'm really passionate about what you do. And I only came into sprouting this year. I had sprouts before, but I never really paid attention to them as much as I started this year. And then I came across your profile and your book, and I think, wow, this is amazing. So for people that may not really know your story, should we give them a little background about how you got into this and where what was your beginning point?
Sure. I mean, I grew up in New York City, living the standard American life. I just hustled and worked. And then in my late 1999, when I was 33 years old, I kind of had the come to cucumber moment that everyone I knew was getting sick, that they were dying, chronic illnesses, and we were surrounded, by death and disease. And when I realized that it wasn't genetics, that it was epigenetics, that it was living a toxic, carcinogenic, heart disease ridden lifestyle. That's what kind of drove me into plant-based. And in a 2-week period in 1999, I went from literally eating anything to eating fresh, ripe, raw, organic fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, and sprouts. So that was my life. And then since then, I started business back in 2002, retail stores in New York City, to make it easier for people to live this lifestyle or even get a little glimpse of it. So we were doing all raw soup, salads, snacks, entrees, desserts, where everything fit into that criteria, fresh, organic, and raw. And then I had another business. And, after that, I decided to move to the desert. And I'm living in the Mojave Desert. And I realized not only am I in the desert, I'm in a food desert. And that it can take weeks or months or years to grow your own food. Even with the most sophisticated technology and lighting systems and greenhouses, it takes a while to grow your own food. And in the course of meditating and soaking and connecting with the universe, I got the Sprout download. And the Sprout download ended up becoming, the Sprout book. And when the essence of that was sprouts were food, they were vegetables, and that you could grow these vegetables in days, not weeks, months, or years. You could literally grow them in days. And number two, every benefit of the whole food plant-based lifestyle could be achieved by eating sprouts, since sprouts were vegetables. And so they contained every vitamin, mineral, polyphenol, bioflavonoid, antioxidant, prebiotic, probiotic of mature vegetables. So that was really powerful to think about. And then the third was that sprouts were medicine, that they actually had medicinal properties that could be used to treat people that had cancer and autism and Alzheimer's and arthritis and diabetes. It was just so powerful that I decided that that was what I was going to dig into. So over the last 5 years, I wrote the book. I've done a lot of research, and I went from growing alfalfa sprouts and mung bean sprouts to alfalfa, azuki, arugula, radish, clover, broccoli, chia, all sorts of lentils, all sorts of peas, all sorts of varieties of hemp. And you find out that in the course of growing these sprouts, that in a little section, like 1 cubic foot with a bunch of jars, I could grow more food than I could eat. And this food was so potent and so powerful that if people are curious, sprouts can have 20 to 100 times the concentrated micronutrient, phytonutrient content of their mature counterparts. So that just is a whole world of sprouts that no one knows about. And so that became my mission of sharing that message of sprouting.
Beautiful. And I'm really happy that we're doing this today, because one of the things that I really am adamant about is this: we are facing a unprecedented in our lifetime scenario right now, where supply chains are being disrupted. There is a lot happening since the pandemic, and quite possibly people will struggle to get their hands on food. And now in the US, you guys have a lot more food deserts as a standard in many areas. In Europe, we kind of have access to things even in the more rural places, like vegetables and fruit. But with everything happening, I feel like people need to have a plan. And sprouts to me sounds like the greatest plan to have food when you need it if you cannot get it in the store. Because as you said, you don't need a lot of space, you don't need a lot of time. And all you need to do really is stock up on good quality seeds that you can sprout and still nourish yourself and your family, right?
Yeah, I think that, as I've been, focused on sprouts, there's one component of survival, and that is unquestionably sprouts are the best survival food, right? No question. But my message is also about how to incorporate sprouts into one's daily diet, because everyone talks about protein, right? No one's running up to the person going into McDonald's and saying, hey, where are you getting your fiber from? Where are you getting your phytonutrients from? Where do you get your antioxidants from? No one's doing that. But as soon as you say you're plant-based, they're like, oh, well, where do you get your protein from? And the fact is, sprouts have enormous amounts of protein, and they have everything else. So, and I don't know what it is in Europe, but in the US, the recommendation is 7 to 13 servings of fruits and vegetables daily. And the average American is consuming less than one. So if we can get people to start to sprout and start to incorporate some fresh vegetables into their diet, they're going to start to see a change with better clarity, better sleep, better fitness overall, healthier red blood cells, white blood cells, circulation, lymphatic system. All of these things benefit when you have more vegetables in your diet. And the insight, which was right in front of my face for, I'm 56 years old. So for 51 years old, sprouts were in front of my face. And I always thought of them, oh, they're a garnish, they're a snack. I love them, right? I would always say I love sprouts, but I never treated them with the reverence to what they deserved to. And that's when, my TikTok, which is only 4 months old with 20 million views,
wow.
When literally bananas, when people start to realize like, oh, you could grow your own food. Sprouts are a food source, not just a side dish or garnish.
Yeah, and it goes hand in hand with the fact that for the longest time we thought vegetables were just side dish, like side plate, like side dish, and it's not the case. Like our vegetables, our grains, our pulses should be the main course. If anybody still is adamant to eating animal products, which we always hope they don't, that shouldn't be the main course. Like it shouldn't be the main, star of the dish, which is sadly what I grew up with, and you probably did too, where we had like some veggies on the side, and then the main dish was something animal. And it's definitely amazing how sprouts. I mean, for me, it came to this. We started growing our own food, so I just sat there sprouting the seedlings so they'd become a plant, and I'm just thinking, wow, hold on. When I read your book, it kind of connected the dots, because I'm like, this this seedling is now going to become a big plant, and all the nutrients are going to go in the fruit and the vegetable that it grows. But if we sprout the grain, the seed, and we eat it, all that nutrient content is really like so concentrated, because
Right.
it didn't have to become a plant and then give the food to the nutrients to the fruit or the veggie that we're going to eat in the end. So that really just was like, wow. And you kind of really confirmed that, so I love that. And I think it's so powerful that we can have access to these things. And as you said, it's not just a garnish, but it should be really part of our daily lives, and we would see how much better we would do. But also, I think it creates kind of a nice feeling of achievement when you can do something so beautiful as growing your own food in your kitchen, without having to, have amazing resources to have like land or, as you said before, a greenhouse and so on. But I do have a question for you that goes a little bit back to your beginning. You said, you found plant-based, and a lot of people, when they kind of find themselves in front of disease, they might not necessarily go straight for the plant-based or the vegan approach or raw. They would go like, okay, I heard that the paleo is good and the ketogenic diets are good. Did you find yourself navigating these waters of different diets, or did you really go like, actually, I know this is the right one? And how did you come across the plant-based living approach?
Yeah. So I had I grew up where there was the Atkins diet, there was the South Beach diet, and this was before paleo and keto. I remember reading a book called Fit for Life, and John Robbins, not John Robbins, Marilyn Diamond wrote this book, and Harvey Diamond wrote a book, Fit for Life, that talked about like eating fruits and vegetables and fruits on an empty stomach and food combining. And that resonated with me, but it didn't take me, over the hill. It just had me eating more fruits and vegetables and not mixing my proteins and my carbohydrates. Once I, got the message that you could actually live, on fruits and vegetables, like it was possible, which, for this young mind, for me, it wasn't even an option. Like I ate pizza and pasta and chicken and spare ribs and Chinese food and fast food and McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's. Like this was my life. And then, so I had meat, chicken, or fish at least once a day, every day. Like I remember, going to school and, for $2, you could get a scrambled egg sandwich with bacon on it on a roll. And it was just so greasy and tasty and delicious. And that if I missed that one day, like I was upset. So the idea of just eating fruits and vegetables was totally like absurd. But I tried it. And, as opposed to eating just a few cherries or like a slice of watermelon, like I would eat a whole watermelon and I'd eat a pound of cherries and a pound of grapes. And I would be looking forward to what I would get to eat next. And that was like my coping strategy, was that I was going to eat as many fruits and vegetables as I wanted. And I ate mostly fruits back then. The vegetables I would eat were like sugar snap peas, or celery, but I wasn't into like dark green leafy vegetables. I was eating the easier vegetables, but I was eating a ton of fruit. And then if you add on dried fruit, right, which is very filling, very concentrated, and then you add on seeds and nuts, which were my source of protein back then, the day goes by. Like if you're doing things and you're eating, the day goes by. So I remember like my first all raw vegan day, it was like heroic for me. And at that moment, I said, I can do this. And so for 23 years, I've been, 99% raw. And if I cheat, I would have something like brown rice or steamed vegetables or steamed Brussels sprouts or something, because I also do no salt, oil, or sugar. Like, so those things are just drugs, inducers to entice one to overeat. So I like to have the essence of the plants, like in their pure state, because otherwise, like I know one of the magical things about sprouts is you really can't overeat the sprouts. Like if you're eating them and then, and you're chewing them, at some point the brain registers full, I'm done. And it's no longer this pleasure addiction of food. But if you were to take, broccoli and saute it with coconut oil and add salt, like I could eat that until my stomach was distended, and I would just pop. So, because the food, the salt, oil, and sugar affects the dopamine and serotonin in the brain and makes you want to eat it. So being simple with your diet, like I can't believe like how great I feel. Like forget about all things, right? Forget about the environment for a second. Forget about, health and longevity, right? Just how do you feel? Like it feels amazing not to be in pain. It feels amazing to have energy. It feels amazing to be on top of my game with memory, with thoughts, with visualization, with creativity, like a clear mind. It feels amazing to wake up before my alarm clock and be excited about the life I get to experience this day, as opposed to like I still have memory of what it was like, to the alarm clock goes off and I hit snooze and I'm tired and I want to be under the covers and I'm dreading getting out of bed. And like now, like I get up, I meditate, I run, I'm like having fun at life. And the reason why is because I'm eating fun foods that make me feel good, that are aligned, with all of my values.
I relate to that super. I completely relate to that. In fact, you have this really young energy. When you told me your age, I'm like, no, you're 40, please.
Yeah.
You have this wonderful, wonderful energy. It's great. And it comes through. So I really believe that in the morning you're ready to go. And I really do have that too. And I love it because I went through a period where I had a lot of stress and I stopped looking after myself. So I was still vegan, but I was eating vegan junk food, if you like. And the way I felt was awful. And as you said, like in the morning, I just didn't have that strength. I probably had, like high cortisol at night, so I couldn't really go back to bed and really rest. And then very low in the morning when I needed to get up. So I was just a mess. And going back to that really like high energy food made such a difference. And you mentioned you mostly raw or all raw. Um, yeah, I'm actually mostly raw, not fully raw, but for the most part I am, and I really love it. And I never thought I could do raw, but it's like when you start eating raw, there's something that happens. And I had a weekend in the beginning of September when I had 2 days where I had one extra cooked meal, and my body felt it. Did you feel that way too?
What happens is like if I'm eating cooked food, it's really like a drug.
Mm,
Like it's just a drug. Even simple cooked food like brown rice, if there's steamed brown rice unseasoned, it's so much easier to eat, right?
mm,
And the texture and the chewiness, that I could overeat that. So
mm,
I just know, the boundaries for me, that I'm better drinking some water, getting aligned, being present, and knowing like there was also a factor where I used to live in more scarcity, that I didn't know, where my next meals were coming from. I didn't feel necessarily financially stable, and I didn't want to waste vegan food. Like if there was vegan food, I didn't want to waste it.
mm,
And now what I realize is that the food is really much more disposable than my energy, my values, and my guidelines. So every temptation resisted for me makes me feel stronger and more powerful. And with Sprouts, I've shifted much more into the abundance consciousness, where they're so abundant that now I actually feel more safe and settled, that like I could show you, I've got a 35-pound, like 18-kilo bucket, of Sprouts, several of these. So I feel very content, where in the past, the scarcity is always thinking about like, oh, well, what am I going to eat for breakfast? What am I going to eat for
mm,
lunch? What am I going to eat for dinner? And that's when I was in the desert, I was really concerned because I didn't have options of organic health food stores or vegan restaurants. Like I was in the middle of nowhere. And with Sprouts, like, I don't like to go to town. Like I'm very happy, being on our ranch, without leaving. Like we'll go to town and it's almost social. We'll go to the farmer's market and we'll buy some fruit and we'll say hello, to the people in the community. And I've been living here for 5 years, so I know a lot of people in the community now, and it's nice to see them. But I really don't like to leave. It's like I have it all here.
mm. Yeah, I hear you. We have the same. We're on top of a mountain and we're like, we just love it here. We go only when we need to town to get to the farmers market or to bigger cities where we can't find certain things we're looking for. But it's true. I feel like when you're eating a clean diet, you're also connecting to nature in a way that it's heightened, and you feel safe and nurtured around plants, and not just the ones you eat, but also the ones that surround you and animals. And I mean, that's the way I feel anyway. I'm very, very connected to nature, and it makes a huge difference for me and my mental health for sure, and my spiritual health as well. Because I also noticed that I used to teach yoga in London, and although I did meditation and I practiced everything that I preached, there was a disconnect that I didn't know where it came from. And it really made me quite upset because I felt like a fraud sometimes but I feel that being in nature, it just opened up that link that I was missing. And it's just been a very beautiful thing. And I really do credit the raw food as well to having that heightened connection to nature. It's been a really interesting journey for the past year that changed everything for me. So I'm really, really grateful for that. And I think in a way that's why I related to your story when I read it, like everything that you went through. I have a question about your like beginning kind of a business ideas that you had in New York, because in the early 2000s, raw wasn't like a big thing like it's now, or like
Oh, not
later
at
in the
all.
2000s. Yeah. So how was that when you opened your shops and when you had these, options for raw? What was the, the approach of people? Like, how did they feel about it? How did you feel? Did you feel supported? Did you feel like people were like, this is weird? What
I
was
mean,
it?
when we opened up our first Organic Avenue on the Lower East Side, we were next to a bar. And people were much more interested in going to the bar, going to the restaurant, drinking their wine. And sometimes we would get stragglers that were waiting to go in there, like they were on the wait list. And so they would kind of meander into the store.
Mm.
And I felt like it was a Venus flytrap. They'd come in the store and I'd get my latches on them. And it's such an obvious message that if you can take the time to share it with someone, like they're open to it. Like, because who doesn't want to feel good? Who doesn't want to have energy? And who doesn't want to take care of the planet? There's a lot of people that, have all of these associations with food from family, from communion, from, celebratory. And we live in a society where drugs and alcohol, for the most part, are legal,
Mm.
and people are, self-medicating or prescribed medication in order to treat their non-existence. And I can tell you, eating meat is a drug. Like it really is a drug. Like you bite into it, you're getting this blood, you're getting the flesh. Like it triggers things in the brain, both physically, emotionally, spiritually, and it's very addictive. I mean, the main reason why most people won't give up their meat is because they go, I love my meat. I go, well, do you love it like your mother? Like, do you love
Yeah.
it like your wife? And like, well, I just love it. And, that's why I think companies like Beyond Meat, and Just Foods, creating um, these
Alternative.
products that have the same texture and flavor, and now this whole like new phenom of cultured meat and cell-based meat. Like this is all going to shift, because at the end of the day, the person who's eating the meat, they don't really want to hurt the cow. They just want to satisfy their desires. I mean, there's a few people that want to go out and hunt and kill, but for the
Mhm.
most part, people just want to eat what they want to eat, and they view it as a sense of freedom.
Mm.
And when you can offer them a Beyond Burger, it tastes like a regular burger, and you dress it up with all the condiments and the bread and other things, like they're just eating it and they're happy and they're not changing. And I've had to accept that not everyone wants to be enlightened. Everyone doesn't want to be kind of spiritually guided. That people are on their own path. And, it's not for me to judge them. What I want to do is take the people who feel trapped. Like, in America, we have 90 million people that are pre-diabetic and 30 plus million people that are diabetic. And sprouts are the number one food for regulating insulin levels for diabetics, right?
Mm.
Because they're high fiber and they're low fat. So sprouts are perfect for someone with type 2 diabetes. And so a lot of people are uninformed, right? They're taking the medications and they're taking their insulin levels, they're taking insulin, and they think like that, like this is the way they have to live for the rest of their lives. And what I want to do is, whisper in their ear and say, hey, you know what? Like if you start eating sprouts, you'll lose weight, you'll reduce your A1C levels. And I'm not a doctor, right? So everyone should do their own homework. But I've seen the possibilities, I've seen the excitement that people can have with this. And, I think that there's so many areas where, growing up in New York, to me, coconuts were something that you would have when you're on vacation in the Caribbean, right? And at some point, Mark Rampolla, created Zico, and they put coconut water in a bottle and in a Tetra Pak, and it became ubiquitous. And now coconut water is everywhere, and coconut water became a thing. And kale became a thing, and resveratrol became a thing, and goji berries became a thing. And there's different things that are becoming things along the way. And what makes it easier for sprouts to become a thing is because people have seen them, have been exposed to them over their life, whether it was mung beans in an Asian cuisine or alfalfa sprouts on a salad. But there was no advertising and marketing. As I say, there's never been a Super Bowl ad with someone advertising sprouts, right? I mean, you're now starting to see advertisements in America for avocados. There's an avocado board, and avocados have become like a $10 billion industry. Like, I never ate avocados growing up. Like, maybe if I went to a Mexican restaurant, maybe we'd have a small, like, little thing of guacamole. Now you go into the health food store in downtown LA, they'll have 6 different kinds of avocados, different stages of ripeness, different sizes, different varieties, and avocados became a thing. And so I think that, when I was growing up, we didn't have mixed baby little greens. Like we had we had iceberg lettuce, right? And then somehow romaine lettuce became on the map, and then baby mesclun mix became on the map. And I started to eat them as they became. So I think people are familiar with eating greens. Now I have replaced salad greens with sprouts. Like my vegetables, my leafy vegetables in the salads are now sprouts, and they're more nutritious and they're fresher. Because if you think about the supply chain of sprouts versus, like, you're growing them, you pull them out of the jar and you eat them, versus a vegetable salad that's grown on the farm, it's picked, it's transported on a truck, goes in a warehouse, goes on a shelf, and then who knows how long it's sitting there, who's touched it, that sprouts, you're eating a fresh crop every time. And like, if you're buying organic vegetables, it could be like $1 an ounce, right? If you're buying seeds and you're growing sprouts, it's like 10 cents an ounce. So the economic advantage to growing sprouts, there's so many advantages to sprouts. Like, I can talk all day about sprouts. And because it's true. And now we're seeing this momentum globally of people eating sprouts.
Yeah, I mean, here we live in Portugal. It's not as big, I must say, but I'm hoping that people will start because, like, for example, I managed to get some sprouts because obviously I think actually you probably can talk about this more, the importance of getting the right seeds for sprouting, because you don't, I guess you could sprout anything that you buy, but you don't want to risk it if they contaminate it and so on. So here I found about 5 only different kind of sprouts, like mung beans, some I think it was broccoli sprouts, and must have been buckwheat, and so not many, but 5. And I basically didn't have any more choices. But I think you guys in the US actually quite forward with that, and I think the UK, we left the UK a couple of years ago, they were starting already with more options. So that's the beauty of it, that technically you can sprout pretty much everything, but that you're starting to have many more options now. And yeah, so if you can talk about the quality, why the quality of the seeds that you're going to sprout is important, that would be great.
Yeah, I think that the the older the seeds are, the more opportunity they have for them to get contaminated, right? And they will affect germination. So if you're growing seeds in the garden, um, some will sprout, some won't sprout. It doesn't make that much of a difference. But if you're eating them, you want the highest amount of sprouts to germinate and be healthy sprouts. So typically, the sprouts, the seeds that would be generated for sprouting, they would handle with more care and more attention how they pick them, how they store them, how they separate them. And like in the US and in Europe, there are vendors that are now testing the seeds for pathogens and for germination rate. So that way you're getting something that might be guaranteed to have an 85% germination rate, which is much better. Like if you just went into the bulk bin, like I'm supporting people in Africa where there's no health food stores. They're lucky to get any seeds at all. But fortunately, because of the supply chain there, even though they're not getting sprouting seeds per se or sprouting lentils, they're fresh. So they take them. And that's where, there's all different things that you could do to surface sanitize the seed or the lentil or the bean just to make it better. Now, some people can just wash them 6 times, with hot water, not boiling water, but those quick washes will remove things that are on them. And you can then go from just water to more aggressive things like hydrogen peroxide, white vinegar, bleach. Like no one intellectually wants to eat bleach, right? But we know bleach is a rapid oxidizer and actually will kill, as you'd see on the thing, 99.9%. So if you were to take like 1 part bleach, 5 parts water, soak the seeds in them for 5 minutes, and then rinse them a couple times, you're removing the bleach, the chlorine per se, and then you're getting a seed that's safer. Now, a lot of people don't want to deal with it, right? But I always talk about surface level sanitation, because if someone were to surface sanitize their seeds using the bleach formula, and then they rinse them twice a day, and then when they're done sprouting, rinse them again in white vinegar, you're going to have like the safest vegetables that you can have, because nowhere in your house is there going to be an animal pooping, on them. And by doing the nurturing, you're reducing levels of mold and pathogens, and bacteria. So you're keeping things in line. And that means when you talk about the beginning, it's control, right? You can control your kitchen, whether you're washing using soap and hot water to wash and sterilize your parts. So, there was a level where sprouts were so cheap, so inexpensive, that fast food restaurants were using them because they were a low cost thing that it can add, but they didn't have quality standards, and they were cross contaminating the sprouts with the meat, and they weren't storing them in refrigerators. They weren't rinsing them. And so therefore things can happen in a small level, like whatever we hear gets blown out of proportion. But still things can come up. But that's where I'm not aware of any incidences of foodborne illness, deaths, or hospitalizations from homegrown sprouting.
Yeah, that's brilliant. As you say, the safest way. And there are much more people that are getting sick from animal products because they can get salmonella and they mix in, when they cut the boards and so on. I mean, I remember when I used to eat meat now 10 years ago, I was sick maybe twice a year with food poisoning. I have not had food poisoning since I stopped eating animal products. I'm like, hello, simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great, Chantel. We have to wind down. I have to prepare for
Yeah,
my
call.
next little activity. So,
No,
what else
thank
would
you
you
so
like to
much.
cover?
I just have one question. How was the approach of your family when it came to you changing and trying to get them to change as well? Were they accepting? Were they resistant?
I mean, everyone in my family is pretty strong-willed. Fortunately, my partner, she was wanting to be vegan, so this was just easy. And so now we're both 100% vegan, and baby is breastfeeding exclusively. So our family is very content. My brother, um, he's had a lot of health challenges, and I would say he's vegan most of the time, but everyone has to come to this on their own,
Hmm.
right? And they've got to do it on their own, because what happens is you could keep feeding them and telling them, but if they don't understand the why,
Yeah.
they won't stick to it. And so I'm learning more and more about communicating with it. The funniest thing is my brother, um, just got onto social media, and he doesn't follow a lot of people, so he doesn't understand the way the algorithm works. So every time he goes onto TikTok, they're showing him one of my videos, so he wants to see dog videos, or horses or something, and then he's seeing my videos, and he's seeing, like, oh my god, he's like, a million people watch that, 80,000 likes, like, so he's curious, like, about the message of why people are responding, and then he'll go down the rabbit hole reading the comments, because there's a lot of debates, and almost every one of my posts, someone is like copying Liver King or Carnivore MD or someone else, and I don't want to debate. I'm like open to debating, but that's not my mission. My mission is do whatever you want, but this is the truth that I see it, and I would like to share it with you. And if you don't want it, swipe next or go to the next thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay, I'm very mindful of your time, so I think we can wrap it up. But where can people find your wonderful book?
Yeah, I mean, my book, I went with a major publisher, international publisher, so that the books are available. So I would say just, the large online sellers, but even small booksellers should have access. You might wait, a couple days longer to get it, but the Sprout book, I'll just hold it up because I wrote
Yeah.
it, universally available. And you could follow me on Instagram at Doug Evans, or on TikTok at Sprout Whiz, and
Always.
Sprout Whiz, yeah.
Love it.
So that's it. And you could sign up for my newsletter at thesproutbook.com, and I'll send out some good information about sprouting, and resources and guides to sprouting.
Amazing. Well, I'm sure you're learning more and more about sprouts, so maybe there will be a second book coming at some point. I hope. It's a great read, and yeah, thank you so much for being so passionate about it and sharing so open-heartedly. It's beautiful to have this energy coming through. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure, my joy. Thank you for reaching out, and I look forward to hearing from everybody.
Yeah. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye bye now.
Bye. Thank you, Doug, and thank you everyone for staying on for this episode. I hope you got curious about sprouting, especially if you haven't done it before. And I really would say I love my sprouting jars. I do it in jars instead of trays. I just prefer it that way. And I find it so fascinating to see the changes of these little sprouts that become food. It's amazing. So if you have children, this is something really fun to do with them as well. And it's kind of a biology experiment, and then they get to also eat really nutritious food on top of it. So it's a win-win. If you are more interested about the subject, if you want to learn more, please do check out the show notes where I put all the links to Doug's work so that you can actually dive into it and learn more. I really hope to see you soon next week, and if you like this episode, please do share it, rate it, and leave us a review so we can keep on growing. All right, have a good day. Bye.